Hello and welcome to Overdrive On Track. The second Indian Grand Prix is over and the Formula One circus may have moved on to a new destination. But just this week, the FMSCI, or Federation of Motorsports Clubs of India, wrote to the central government asking it to consider waiving import duty on F1 cars and equipment for the next edition of the race. Remember, the Indian government has taken the stand that Formula One is an entertainment rather than sporting venture. So what is the business of Formula One with its mix of fast cars, glamour and entertainment all about? Here's the ultimate insider's take.
Over the next half hour, we'll speak to team bosses, key stakeholders and F1 insiders to demystify the business of Formula One and look at how it's evolving as the series enters its 6th decade.
Organized motor racing traces its roots back to France in the late 18th century. The first race to be called a Grand Prix was held at Le Mans in 1906, and the sport rapidly spread its wings around the world with races held at iconic venues like Le Mans, the Mille Miglia and Targa Florio road races across Italy, and of course Indianapolis in the United States. But it was only when the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, or FIA, organized the first Formula One World Championship in 1950 that F1's incredible journey began.
The first F1 World Championship race was held at Silverstone in the UK in 1950, and the series steadily grew in popularity through the 50s, 60s and 70s, with races held largely at racetracks around Europe.
198 miles, 76 times down this straight past the pits.
But it was in the 1970s when live television arrived to change the sport forever that Formula One began to transform.
Watch the Ferraris.
From a largely niche sport with a few dedicated teams and drivers to the modern multi-billion-dollar enterprise it is today.
It's covered in debris.
It started in the early 70s when they began to realise that there was potential for not just being a sport for rich men spending money, but actually making some money. And it was the television that made that happen. And from about mid-70s, 76 onwards, after the great season of Niki Lauda and James Hunt, which they're going to make a movie of soon, then Formula One began to take off as a televised sport. And as a result of that, they then went into a fairly big commercial war with the International Federation to gain control of the rights. And they won, the teams won the right to exploit the commercial rights, but the FIA kept the ownership of them. And then what happened after that is that Bernie Ecclestone negotiated, manoeuvred, whatever word you want to use. He gained control of the rights personally from the teams. Basically, they didn't want to take the kind of risks that he was willing to take. And so gradually, one by one, they fell by the wayside until he had it all under his control.
While the FIA controls the sport's technical regulations, Formula One management, now owned by private equity firm CVC Capital Partners, owns the marketing rights. And the firm recently sold a 21% stake, which values the business at $7 billion. As a result of all the wrangling and multiple power centers, the sport itself is controlled and policed by a legal document called the Concorde Agreement. First signed in 1981, it has been through 6 iterations, with the 7th agreement set to roll from 2014.
It's a commercial contract, and so we're not supposed to know what it says. And there are 3 parties, the FIA, the Formula One group and the teams. Now the teams are not, we count them as one, but they're totally divided. And it's almost impossible for them to get together. So you have these 3 elements that have to be balanced. And it's a question of who gets what, who gets paid what, when they get paid and what rights they have. And so it's just a negotiation, a commercial negotiation really.
You've got 3 or 4 teams here at this end of the pit lane who have stable businesses. You've got teams beyond that that really have a fight on their hands. Now, if we ignore that and say we're okay today, the chances are these teams will start to fail. So I think it's vitally important in an immensely competitive environment. Formula One is competing in the entertainment business. It's competing with other sports. It's competing with other forms of entertainment. From online to television to any form of leisure activity. And therefore, we've all got to work together. The sport is much stronger if the teams, the FIA, the world's governing body, and the commercial rights holder actually try and work together. Now, it doesn't always, it's difficult. We've all got different self-interests, we've all got different angles, we've all got different views. But, whether it's under the umbrella of FOTA, whatever label you want to put it to, I think basically my view is, McLaren has been in Formula One since 1966. We are the second oldest team here. We're one of the top teams. but we have a commitment to trying to make this sport not only better, more exciting, more vibrant, but also more sustained. Make sure that we can keep all these teams in.
But while all the stakeholders are committed to cutting costs and improving the spectacle, there remains a big gap between the haves and the have-nots. At the top end of the field, teams spend close to $300 million a year, while smaller teams like Naren Karthikeyan's HRT have budgets closer to $30 million. In the middle of the pack are teams like Sauber, middling budgets, steady results, but also crucial to the continued success of the sport.
I think it is most important that we all work together, because we are all sitting in the same boat. It's not against each other. This is only going to be harmful to the sport, and fans will not understand this, as we experienced it many years ago. So we did a very important step by all of us coming together and understanding each other, and I'm very sure that an agreement will be reached soon.
Now, as a strong midfield team, Sauber today, is a good, strong resource restriction agreement really important for Sauber in the years going ahead for Formula One?
Absolutely, and I think it is also the key for Formula One in the future, because fans, especially today, who are a key element in our success overall, don't understand that why this kind of money is being spent, especially if you look at the economic condition on a global basis. So by taking these kind of steps with the resource restriction agreement, I'm convinced that teams have gone in the right direction, but it was just a first step. As Sauber, we propagate a lot the budget cap, because we think that that would allow a team to be very innovative still, which is also a core essence of Formula One. Be smart about your ideas, your engineering, but all this within a healthy frame, financial frame.
The wrangling over budget caps and a voluntary resource restriction agreement between teams assumes special significance given the raft of technical changes set to hit the sport in 2014. And current Constructors champions Red Bull Racing in particular are pushing for a more comprehensive agreement.
We are fully committed to seeing cost controls in Formula One, but I think you've got to look at the whole picture, not just parts of it. And I think that the way that the current resource restriction is drafted, it basically is detrimental to how Red Bull operates. Other teams associated to automotive manufacturers and that also produce engines are treated in a different manner, and we certainly don't believe that that is the right way to move forward, and therefore we're very keen to sit down and discuss with the FIA and the commercial rights holder ways that you can encompass all the spend within a Formula One team, rather than just elements where other elements go unprotected, unpoliced.
Another impact of the new 2014 regulations is on engine costs. Currently, Mercedes, Renault, Ferrari and Cosworth supply engines to teams on the grid at a fixed price of €10 million per car per season. But given the higher development costs of the new generation 1.6-litre turbo units, the suppliers say costs are bound to rise exponentially.
Talking about the new engine regulations for 2014, as one of the two manufacturers in Formula One, it's obviously important for you to have the linkages to your road car business, but also there's the fact that Mercedes have the best engines right now probably in Formula One. So is there a little bit, in your mind, are you conflicted about giving up the V8s and moving to V6s from 2014?
No, I mean, our challenge is to do the same job, or probably try to do even a better job in the future. This is a big challenge. It's actually three manufacturers, Ferrari, Renault, ourselves, with the new so-called power units. This is an absolute step change in Formula One. Less fuel consumption, same horsepower. There is a earth system, so you recover energy that was wasted in the past. A huge challenge, and our challenge of Mercedes will be to try and build the best engine.
Given the current economic climate all around the world, what do you think Formula One needs to do in terms of the new Concorde Agreement and resource restriction to perhaps bring down costs and yet retain the spectacle?
Yeah, absolutely. We are very much supporting the so-called resource restrictions. We have been and we are pioneers in that respect. We were very much focused on this engine homologation in the past, which saved a lot of money for the teams. So it's the leasing fee went down. It cost in the past twice as much to have an engine as it currently does. So these are all initiatives of the manufacturers, and I think we know how to save money. Of course, we need to spend money, but we have had 2005, for example, we needed to spend twice the money we are currently spending as Daimler. So it's developing in the right direction.
Even as the teams try to reach a consensus on controlling costs and leveling the playing field, the FIA also wants an increased share of the billion-dollar pie and will introduce weighted entry fees from the 2013 season.
The FIA, because the original deal wasn't a great payer for them, they want more of the pie, which is fair enough. Given how much money is now being made, I don't think it's outrageous to ask for 40 million. It sounds again like a huge amount of money, but when you think about turnover of 1.5 billion, 40 million is peanuts. So the FIA went to Bernie and said, we want this much money, and Bernie said, that's fine, I don't have a problem with that, but you can only have half of it from me because I give half. Half of everything goes to the teams, so they have to pay, which is fair enough again. And so now the FIA can't just say to the teams, we want this. They have to have an excuse for getting it, and so they said, right, the entry fee will be more expensive, which is fair enough again. And to make it easier on the smaller teams, they then did this sort of taxation, which is the number of points you get dictates your entry fee. So yes, it's going to be very, very expensive to enter the World Championship for Red Bull. They'll probably have to pay about $5 or $6 million, but the smaller teams will be getting in for 300,000, which is again fair, because balancing the revenues is one of the problems of Formula One, because the small teams, how do you compete with an organisation that's spending 10 times more than you do?
Over the past year, there was even speculation that CVC, the owners of Formula One, were considering a stock market flotation. But according to CEO Bernie Ecclestone, that plan is on hold till 2014. Time for a quick break, but when we get back on track, we'll talk about the changing face of Formula One sponsorships and meet some of the brands associated with the sport on a global scale.